Hi, everybody, and welcome again to another edition of the Right Has Left podcast. I am your host, Roy Garden, and I'd like to welcome you all aboard for this week in June. And what we do on this podcast? Well, it's very simple. We talk about all things Trumpism. And when I say all things Trumpism, I'm talking about Trump himself, the White House, his administration. And the guy provides so much news every week that that's why I'm able to do this podcast. Every week, he's got something to say, and we always take deep dives into some of the stuff that he talks about that maybe the networks don't cover. Or many times I have things on my podcast that is late breaking because you hear it here first, and then the networks pick up on it later on in the week. So I kind of like that. So having said that, let's go ahead and get right into it. The late breaking news that I have just happened like late yesterday evening. I taped these podcasts on Saturday morning, and I do that on purpose to try to get everything from the week that happens. And here is the latest breaking news. And networks didn't really do too much coverage on it, but as you're well aware of, since the U.S. kind of got into partnership with Venezuela, they now have a lot of a partnership on doing things in that country, like the oil that Trump sends all the money to offshore accounts. And then they also work with the military now and getting some of the so-called drug dealers out of there. So he had a great post on his Truth Social. And I'll quote some of it. It says, "At my direction, the United States Southern Command delivered a swift and lethal kinetic strike to successfully execute Nino Guerrero," Trump said in a post on his Truth Social website late on Friday, referring to gang leader Hector Rosenford Garcia Flores. Trump added that their operation was in collaboration with Venezuela, which they did agree that it was. And they confirmed they participated in the operation in the southeastern state of Bolivar, stating that Flores was killed during clashes with members of criminal groups. Now, the U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, in a post on X, said the strike had occurred earlier in the week, and they are just now releasing the information, and that this guy was a bad actor, that he dealt in drug, narcotics, weapons, cocaine, and it was a great idea to get rid of him. Now, why is Trump boasting this? It's quite obvious. Because he does have a working relationship with Venezuela, obviously he can get more traction out of there to prop himself up and make him look good. The war in Iran, which we'll be talking about here very shortly, the latest on that, is not working so well for him on a public relations platform. He's basically breaking down a deal there that is very similar to what Biden had, that he, tore up the contract on that. So with Venezuela, he's got more pull there. He's got better relationships with Venezuela, and of course he can, it makes him look better. Trump, as you're well aware of, has a huge ego. He has to take care of that ego. He has to make himself look good 24/7, and so something like that they can control. Hopefully he'll get some news out there so his MAGA base will go, "Yeah, good job, Trump." So that's basically what you're seeing there. So having said that, now let's go ahead and get into what's going on around the world with our top story. And I always like to do our top story first, and that's basically talking about the latest in Iran. And so as we get into that, President Trump did say this past Thursday that he canceled the forthcoming strikes and bombings against Iran, citing progress in discussions with Tehran's leadership. Based on the fact that discussions with the Islamic Republic of Iran have been brought to the highest level of Iranian leadership, and if approved, I have as president. I have to pause there. Since I'm reading an exact quote there, isn't it interesting how he always has to say, like, I as your president? Like, we don't know that already, Donald, but he loves to say, I as your president, or me as your president, and I am your king. It's interesting how he says that. If the people of the United States don't know that you are our president, like it or not, we have a serious problem here. Again, that's him feeding his ego. So anyway, to move on, he canceled the scheduled strikes and bombings against Iran, and the president wrote in a post on Truth Social, discussions and final points have been in both a concept and great detail approved by all parties involved, including the United States, Israel, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, Turkey, Pakistan, Bahrain, Kuwait, Jordan, Egypt, and others, he added. But the president said that the United States naval blockade, which has been in place since April, will remain in place until the new agreement is signed. And, of course, as you're well aware of, this all has to do with the Strait of Hormuz. We got to get that open, get the oil flowing through again, and that is a part of the agreement. Perhaps, we will make some headway, and the deal is perhaps going to be signed this weekend, according to what they are saying. Now, whether that is true or not, there are still a lot of pieces of the puzzle to, come into place, but they are looking, so they say, to get it signed perhaps by this weekend. And they're going to do it in a different location this time. So how does this all play out? Well, if they do get it signed, it's going to be basically a 60-day peace agreement, ceasefire. So I know Trump is basically talking up like this is the best thing since whatever, but it's basically a 60-day ceasefire, and then they work on again to get the other pieces of the puzzle into place. So money is basically the sticking point. Trump wants that part buried in the plan so he doesn't overshadow his rhetoric that he does with Obama, how Obama did a terrible deal. What's involved here now is money that is 4 times as much as what Obama had. Trump doesn't like to make that public, and he's trying to bury that in all of this so, the American people aren't aware of that. And so, he also, as you're well aware of, went on a conference call. He got so excited about this deal that he said the war with Iran is over. Watch this.
I don't know if you heard, but we ended the war with Iran today, and they have agreed never to have a nuclear weapon, something that we insisted on. That was the whole purpose. That was 95% of it, and they've done it in the most powerful way you can do it.
Well, obviously, the war is not over. We may have a workings of a peace agreement and a ceasefire for 60 days in place. And, of course, between those 60 days, Iran can violate it. Israel can violate it, and they start, back up with their bombings, and the U.S. can retaliate, and it can all fall apart. We have heard Donald Trump play Chicken Little now how many times, saying that you've got a deal, you got a deal. We don't have a deal, we got a deal, we got a deal, we don't have a deal. And as he says that, of course, the stock markets react to his rhetoric. If he says we got a deal, the stocks are great, oil prices drop. Then we see that we don't have a deal, and then fighting starts back up, oil prices go back up, and the stocks react to that. His mouthpiece is basically controlling the stocks, and of course that's to be expected, and so that's why he says what he says. He is told to say that, he'll put things out on Truth Social to make it all look good. Now, I'm not trying to be a negative Nanny here, but it's true. I hope we get this stupid thing done and over with. We started this. We can't get out of it. The story that I gave you earlier in Venezuela, that was a distraction thing. And so you get back into here with Iran, and hopefully something will happen. But I don't know. So moving on, the sum that Mr. Trump has to contemplate is $24 billion. Half of it to be paid up front would be released in exchange for a memorandum of understanding to send 2 similarly costly and politically painful months of fighting in the Middle East. Let me repeat that figure, $24 billion. Now, this money is frozen, so it's Iranian money in the first place. So we froze it, and they want it back. That's simply what it is. And so, it's going to be paid in 2 sections. Part of the agreement is, of course, the Strait of Hormuz opens back up. Our naval blockade will be removed if they behave. And, of course, the uranium thing, it's now down to a point to where perhaps United Nations personnel will go into Iran and check and make sure that the uranium is not being used for nuclear weapons instead of us going in there and remove it. They're desperate. The United States is trying anything and everything it can to get the hell out of this mess that they started. started. That's basically all it is. And Trump got upset with Tehran because they're the ones that released the details. They didn't want him to do that. It's embarrassing him. Now he's got to kind of backtrack to everybody and say, well, that's not what we're really doing, blah, blah, blah. So it's a solution for Donald Trump to give Iran back the money that we froze. But and that's what they want. And, of course, the other problem that we got there is a 60-day ceasefire agreement as we go on and negotiate everything else. That gives time for Iran to build back up their drones and stuff and start all over again, if, in fact, they would. We don't know that. But, this is how it's been playing out anyway. So the supreme leader of Iran warned United States bases in the Middle East are no longer safe, and with the higher oil prices and the chances of global recession higher at any point since 2020, and the pandemic piece will probably mean releasing those billions of cash to the regime, despite Mr. Trump's numerous promises and declaration, remains standing. So it's probably going to happen as part of this, agreement. He wants us over because the midterms are killing him right now. It's killing his Republican colleagues as well. This war is got to cease if the Republicans expect any kind of momentum going into the midterms. It's dragging them all down, and they know it, and they've been begging him to come up with anything and to get this thing put behind him. Whether they can or not, whether we started something that is just too impossible to get out of, is to be seen. So, Trump is raising expectations at this time. He really will close the deal. He's getting all excited, as he always does. And you can't blame the poor guy. He needs something to come out positive. And whether or not the enriched uranium will be part of all this is to be seen. He keeps repeating publicly that it has to be, but how to get it out of there and at the same time keep Iran happy is what's the sticking point here. And I think the United Nations people going in there and checking the uranium every on an open basis is probably what's going to come down to. But going back to the frozen assets, some people think that only $2 billion of Iran's assets are actually frozen in the U.S., and some of it is located elsewhere. The frozen assets are expected to be basically around $100 billion in total assets, and it's held in an international bank frozen by the United Nations, not so much the U.S., although Trump likes to claim that he has it all. So if you've done some fact-checking and digging, this is where it really all is excuse me, the United Nations have most of that money frozen. So we would need cooperation from other governments to get this money released back to Iran. And, of course, that's going to be another sticking point. So there's a lot of puzzles here, a lot of pieces that's got to come into play to make all of this work. Whether or not it'll happen and whether we can stop the bleeding is going to be to be seen, to be honest with you. So I wanted to bring that all to your attention because this war needed that. This war is becoming out of control. It's kind of like becoming another Vietnam. I hate to use that terminology, and hopefully things will happen this week. And I really, honest to God, hope that it does. We can get this thing put behind us. I think it's already done enough damage to the Republican Party that it's not going to change anything if it does end, mainly because of the economy. And if we get it done and closed out and over with, like, say, this weekend, it's going to take months and months for the oil prices to get back down to pre-Iran invasion, where it was like $2.89 a gallon or whatever. It's not going to happen overnight. And the other thing, too, you got to keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, this is not like an end of the war signed and sealed this weekend. The first phase is a 60-day ceasefire as they go on to continue the negotiations. And if you remember, last time we've had a ceasefire, it went to hell in a handbasket in less than a week. So you got to keep this all in mind. Iran is basically pulling the U.S. strings. We're not pulling their strings. They are pulling ours. So please understand that. All right, and moving on with other news, President Donald Trump, also sitting in the Oval Office, told reporters this past Wednesday that the United States has been sneaking millions of barrels of oil out of the Strait of Hormuz, if you remember that. And despite tensions defying Iran's restrictions on transit through the waterway. That is why Trump claimed oil prices have hovered around $90 a barrel in recent days instead of staying above $100 a barrel, as was the case earlier in the weeks when the U.S.-Israel war started. The narrow strategic waterway, and again, I'm showing this graphic, which hosts 20% of the world's energy flows, has largely been shut since early March after the U.S. and Israel attacked Iran. Now, in early March, Iran said it would not allow passage to any ships through the strait. And then it was agreed to allow limited ships from select friendly countries through on the condition that they negotiated their transit with Iran. Now, on April 13th, 5 days after agreeing to a ceasefire with Iran, the U.S. imposed a naval blockade on Iranian ships and ports, with the U.S. naval blockade on one side and the Iranian authorities on the other. Only a few ships have been able to cross the Strait of Hormuz. Against that backdrop, has the U.S. indeed been able to get ships carrying millions of barrels of oil out on the strait without Iran's permission? Again, we all know Donald Trump. About 5% of what he is saying is the actual truth. Again, on this podcast, we dig and we dig to get true answers. We have all learned that anything that comes out of Donald Trump's mouth has to be fact-checked, and what he says is about 5%. He's got his gullible MAGA base that, he could say the sky's purple, and all the MAGA base goes, Donald Trump says the sky's purple, so therefore it's purple. I mean, he's our new God, therefore it's got to be purple. So I know that sounds kind of bad, but it's basically true. That's basically how Donald Trump works. He says whatever he says, and the poor guy, has those percentages that tend to believe him. So, and when he says he's been taking millions, let me correct myself, of barrels out of oil, nobody knows it. So he says, watch this brief video clip.
Something you didn't know. Do you know we've been taking out millions of barrels of oil? Nobody knows it. You know who doesn't know about it? Iran, until right now. We took out the other night 22 ships. Late at night with no lights, because they don't have any radar, because we blasted the crap out of it. We took out, that's why oil's $85 a barrel. I mean, you take a look. Remember when I did this, I said, look, the one bad thing will be, we hit the best economy we've ever hit. And I said to my people, I had Scott, I had Howard, I had Pete, I had all of them. I had Todd in the room. I said, the one thing we have to do now, we had just hit the highest stock market in history, highest 401ks in history. Everything was going well. And I said, I hate to do this to you guys, but Iran's going to have a nuclear weapon very soon. We have to go and attack.
So he added that Iran was blindsided by the United States move, which is not true. We took out the other night 22 ships late at night with no lights because they didn't have any radar on, because we blasted the crap out of Iran's strategic infrastructure. His word was shit, but we'll say crap here. The president said that he was choosing to talk about the so-called secret mission because Tehran had figured it out. Later, he repeated the claim on his Truth Social platform, saying he directed the United States military last month to undertake the secret mission to support oil tankers and other commercial ships through the Strait of Hormuz. And, 100 million barrels of oil were moved through there. And he also went on to say this widely successful effort is because the United States of America controls the Strait of Hormuz, not Iran, he said. Again, that's not true. So Trump's Energy Secretary, Chris Wright, told a congressional hearing that same day that he was not aware of the United States taking millions of barrels out through the Strait of Hormuz, though he added that the military did help to get some oil out of the narrow passage. Wright clarified that the vessels making it through the strait were not Iranian. The Gulf countries, including Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Qatar, used the waterway to export supplies. So one of his own people basically called bullshit on what Trump said. So, and again, it's kind of sad that you get that poor guy, talking like that. So let's deep dive into this. Did the United States manage to sneak past Iran? So let's put his claim in context. So he claims that he pushed out 100 millions of barrels of oil through the Strait of Hormuz. Before the war broke out in the Gulf waters, about 140 vessels, including oil tankers, transited the Choke Point Passage daily, sandwiched between the coast of Iran and Oman. The passage hosted about 20 million barrels per day of oil before the tensions started. The president's claim of 100 million barrels of oil is roughly equal to 5 days of pre-war output, compared with some 2 billion barrels that should have transited through the Strait of Hormuz over the duration of the war, if not for the ongoing conflict. But even 5 days of pre-war maritime traffic through the strait would amount to about 700 ships. Now, while, as Trump claimed, vessels being guided by the United States military in the waterway have, at times, turned off their transponders, there is no evidence so far that the volume of traffic passing through the strait during the war is enough to support his claims. Shipping, tracking, and intelligence companies offer differing numbers of vessels that have crossed the strait since the tensions began. That is because their criteria differ on what constitutes a transit. Windward recorded nearly 80 commercial ships leaving the Gulf in the last 5 weeks. Lloyd's lists estimates about 142 vessels that have left the water since March, and Kepler puts the number at its highest, recording 264 trip transits. Even Kepler's figures falls well short of the level of maritime traffic that before the war would have amounted to 100 million barrels of oil passing through the Strait of Hormuz. Now, many of the ships have passed through the strait have transited with Iranian authority, paying tolls at the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or the IRGC, rather than through a United States scheme that kept Iran in the dark. Small boats pursue big ships as most of the time, so they kind of keep track of what's going on there. Now, Tim Hawkins, a Central Command spokesperson, said in a statement that the forces communicate and coordinate with commercial ships in the area without delving into details in the face of the United States economically punishing naval blockade against Iran's ports. The IRGC still maintains a firm grip over the strategic waterway, however. Countries friendly to Iran, like Pakistan, India, and Russia, have negotiated a transit for some of their vessels carrying essential energy supplies. So, this goes on and on and on to fact check what Donald Trump has said. I don't want to read all of it. So, in a nutshell, it's typical of Trump to say things that he says, and then, of course, it turns out to be about 5% true of what he's saying. Trump is notorious for, lack of better words, lying or stretching the truth. That's just Donald Trump. We all know that now. The guy's been in long enough. We know Donald Trump likes to play people. And so he has said that. This right here shows you that it's stretched out a little bit. And the bottom line is the United States does not control anything in the Strait of Hormuz. We do have a naval blockade. It has been somewhat effective. Yes, we are escorting some ships. But the amount of oil that he says that has been taken care of is not true. So that's Donald Trump. We all know that's how he likes to say things. And so what you just read there is easily available online. And I'm not making it up. I just, on this podcast, you got to fact check the guy because he likes to say things that goes on and on and on. So again, I don't like to always, cut the guy down, but you got to fact check him. You really do. So let's move on to some other news. Now, when President Trump took over the Kennedy Center, his people allegedly ignored a long-term agreement and seized millions of dollars from the Washington National Opera. That's what the WNO alleges in a lawsuit filed against the center, and it was filed just this past Thursday in federal court. According to court documents, the WNO and the Kennedy Center had a contractual relationship for nearly 15 years in which operas were held at the venue in exchange for the center providing support services for the WNO, including managing donations. When the Trump administration took over the center, however, many of those services, including marketing, fundraising and administrative tasks ended in late 2025. When the WNO complained to the center, instead of fixing the issues, the center's governance proposed ending the relationship in January of 2026. Surprise, surprise, surprise. The WNO then asked the center to return its $17 million in funds, which the agreement states belongs to the WNO. But despite being contractually obligated to return the funds, the center still hasn't given them back one damn cent so far. And now the WNO is suing to get that money back. All of this comes as judge denied a last-minute appeal to keep the Trump's name on the center Friday. That's now coming down. And Trump may follow through on his stated desire last month to hand over control of the center back to Congress. We will have to wait and see what happens there. So, again, the new board, as you're well aware of, was put in place by Donald Trump. He fired everybody else when he wanted to take over and put his name on the Kennedy Center. This is just the ongoing thing with all the structures around Washington, D.C. Trump has got this, whatever you want to call it, fascination, dream, infatuation to have his name and his legacy all over Washington, D.C. because he is the almighty golden president and all bow down and worship him. So, and he wants a state-controlled media. He uses FCC guy to handle that. If he has a state-controlled media, this is nothing but positive things about him, and he has his name all over Washington, D.C., he can go on with his legacy of I am the greatest there has ever been. Look at all this. Look how people have bowed down to me, and he's using his power to do it. So, we'll wait and see what happens with the Kennedy Center, if that board's going to be replaced. But, this money is due these people, and it's going to wind up in court. And, of course, I know damn well Trump is going to have to wind up giving that money back to him. All right, moving on to other news, and that, of course, is the LDS Church. I bring this story up because it's quite interesting. So what's going on with the Mormon Church? Recently, Mormon leaders, military veterans, and elected officials had a huge reaction. It was with anger to a new Department of Defense policy that does not consider the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to be Christian religion. This part is a wider effort to cut down the United States military list of recognized faiths. The Pentagon's decision to list the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints apart from other Christian faith is wrong and needs to be corrected, said Republican Representative Mike Kennedy of heavily Mormon Utah, and he wrote that on X on Sunday. On that ground and a much larger ground of shared faith values and purpose, Latter-day Saints stand alongside many Christians of every tradition in following the teachings of Christ. We only ask to be accurately portrayed. I strongly urge the department to correct the record. And in a separate post, Senator John Curtis of Utah said church members are among the most patriotic, service-oriented individuals in our country. They are also unequivocally Christian. Just look at who is in the name of the church, he said. So, as you're well aware of, since that post came out, Pete Hegseth did correct and fixed, and the LDS Church is now listed as a Christian faith-based organization. And he said the reason this all came about is the the pastors within the military have only can go so far, and there's just hundreds of people who say their faith is this, their faith is that, and they're spread thin. And so that's why he tried to whittle down the list just to 31 recognized religions to make the pastors that are within the military more accessible to people and not be so overwhelmed. Now, what is funny about all this is the fact of the matter is the state of Utah is heavily Republican. And for Pete Hegseth to even pull these people out in the first place was a devastating blow to the Republican Party. And these Republican representatives, their congressmen and their senators from Utah are going like, what the hell are you doing? Utah is basically is a strong MAGA-based place, and now you're going to cut the church out. You can't do that, dude. It was one of the dumbest moves that Pete Hegseth could ever think of doing, no matter what he thinks of the LDS Church. But, when you start annihilating the western states, which are all strong MAGA base, be it Utah, Idaho, or Wyoming, you are pulling the dumbest thing that you could ever think of. Now, again, we deep dive on this podcast, so let me share you some information that has been going on here. Members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints are slowly shifting away from the Republican Party, with younger and moderate demographics starting to drive the trend. While they do remain the second most Republican religious group in America, the partisan gap has narrowed, marking the largest leftward shift of any United States religion group over the past 2 decades. Now, data compiled by market research from YouGov using the Cooperative Election Study highlights a distinct shift, decreased GOP affiliation. In the late 2000s, Republicans held a massive 52-point advantage over Democrats among the surveyed by the Latter-day Saints. That advantage has since shrunk, with Republican identification falling from roughly 75% down to about 56%. So that's pretty amazing there, isn't it? Now, why is this? Older church members remain strongly tied to the GOP, but the partisan divide among young adults has narrowed significantly. Shifts in devoutness, data indicates that those moving away from the political right, the fastest trend to be among younger LDS members, and less devout also in their attendance. Despite this trend, the LDS Church itself remains strictly apolitical. Under its official policy of political neutrality and participation, the institution does not endorse or oppose political candidates. That is true. They don't ever come out and endorse any one person. It's just that a lot of popular Republicans are claiming LDS as their religion. However, the shift in members' voting behavior has promoted national political organizations such as the Democratic National Committee to invest in states like Utah with the goal of expanding the progressive base, and it is working. The change in political landscape within the faith has generated diverse perspectives online, with lively discussions taking place across all those platforms. So that's kind of interesting news there, and I wanted to share that with you because so many people, consider LDS faith and the state of Utah Republican, and they still are Republican. Don't get me wrong. The overall, the state of Utah goes Republican. But it's interesting that the LDS Church is within itself, which has a ton of money and has a ton of influence, whether they, endorse candidates or not. It's fascinating to see that the young people, as they up and come and grow within the state of Utah and within the religion, are leaning Democratic, as the baby boomers of the LDS Church slowly, pass away, get out, retire, whatever the case may be. So I found that kind of interesting how, when they're dissing the LDS Church, they did fix it, but yeah, it was quite the thing there to see that. So in other news here that's happening, I'm trying to find the graphic here. I swore I put it in there. Oh, there it is. Let's take a look at this story right here. And this happened past weekend, but it's still something I want to go over. Donald Trump stormed out of an interview with NBC's Kristen Welker after being pressed on his claims about the 2020 election results. You all saw that, and it's been in the news numerous times, but I'm going to run a clip of this. The president has long insisted that the election, which he lost both the popular vote and the Electoral College to Joe Biden, was rigged. Your elections are crooked, and you're crooked, Trump told Welker before walking out. Donald Trump doesn't want to hear a word about the 2020 elections unless it's on his own terms. The president, soon to turn 80, proved to be as much during a recent Meet the Press interview with NBC's Kristen Welker than he ever has been. And that showed him storming off the set and getting confronted on election conspiracies. During the lengthy conversation, which aired Sunday, Trump repeated his claims that the 2020 election results were rigged, arguing that it is happening again right now, basically also in the state of California, because his poor Republican guy that he endorsed lost. You were never presented evidence that the 2020 election was rigged, so said Kristen, and he said he wouldn't answer the question. So, again, watch this clip, and then I'll be right back.
Now, I don't know what's going to happen with the weaponization fund. I love the idea because people like you, the fake, dirty press, the crooked press, people like stupid Biden, he's not smart enough to know what's going on, but people that surrounded his beautiful, resolute desk in the Oval Office, what they did to the lives of people, they destroyed people. They sent people to jail who did nothing
All
wrong.
right, just to be very clear, there's no evidence of what you're saying. But
There's
let me
a
ask
lot
you
of
about
evidence.
Todd Blanche. Let me ask you about
Listen
Todd
to me.
Blanche.
Listen to me.
Let's talk
There's
about Todd
tremendous evidence. There's nothing
It's
but
not been
evidence. The
presented
election
in a
was
court of
rigged.
law.
It was a dirty election.
Mr.
And it's
President,
happening again right now
You've
in
never
California.
presented evidence
It's happening
that the
right
2020
now in
election
California.
was rigged.
Right now, it's look at what's
Where's
happening
the
in
evidence
California.
to that?
It's
The
4
Republicans
days.
are doing well in California.
California, no, they're not. They're dropping fast because it's a rigged election. Let me tell you, it's 4 days, and they aren't even close to coming up with it.
That's how they count
You know
the
why
votes
they're doing
in
that?
California.
Because they're cheating on the election.
Do you have evidence to support
all
that?
I have to do is look. All I have to do is look.
That's not
and
evidence.
I listen to people, and let's see what happens.
But sir, that's not evidence.
Do you think
and
it's appropriate?
That's how they
that
count the votes in
Do you
California.
think it's appropriate that they have an election and 5 days later they're nowhere close to picking a
State
winner?
and local officials acknowledge they are slow. They're urging.
No, they're crooked.
They're urging the
crooked.
votes to be counted quickly. That's how they vote
They're
in
crooked,
California.
just like you're crooked. Your press is crooked, and Meet the Press is crooked.
To be fair, I'm not crooked, but let's
Really?
Let's
Well,
continue.
you play right into their hands. then.
Let's continue.
You're either crooked or you're stupid.
Let's
you play
continue.
right into their hands with this rap. You know that these elections are rigged. Your network knows that they're rigged. You know that I won an election in a landslide, and I got 94% bad press.
But Mr. President,
you know why I
you've
got
never
that?
presented
Because you have no
evidence.
credibility.
But you've never presented evidence that it was rigged. Let's keep talking about. I want to talk about Todd
You
Blanche.
have more evidence. There's more evidence than ever presented.
Let's talk
Your
about
elections
you
in
went
this
to
country,
court.
we're like a third world country.
But, sir,
your elections are crooked, and you're crooked, and Meet the Press is crooked,
Mr.
and so
President-
is ABC and CBS and CNN.
But, Mr. President-
You're one-sided crooked networks. All right, let's call it quits because I've had enough. Thank you, darling. Have a good time.
Mr. President, let's please. I traveled all the way to Wisconsin.
I've sat
I traveled
in the rain with
all.
you.
I know. I
I've sat in the
traveled
rain
all the
with
way
you
to
for an hour,
Wisconsin.
on and off in the rain, and I've given you enough time. You ought to straighten out your press because you know what?
Mr.
A
President,
country can never be
We
great
traveled
with a dishonest
Listen,
press.
we
Come on, let's
traveled
go.
all the way to Wisconsin for this interview.
So, I mean, I don't need to hammer this interview out. Kristen did a marvelous job. And for Trump always goes off on it like that when he can't present facts. And, you know, every time somebody asks him a question, especially female reporters, and we can't answer the question, he goes on the defense and calls them names, you're crooked, worthless, you lie, your networks doesn't true, they're fake news. Because that's Trump, because he can't come up with an answer. He goes on the defense when people ask him hardball questions and he can't answer it. This is why he wants a state-controlled media. He wants a press and networks that do nothing but give him softball questions that he can answer that makes him look good. Because as he gets older and older and his memory begins to get worse and worse, he can't answer questions. We all, and I'm not going to go into this again, we all are all aware of his health questions that are going on, and I'm going to show you something here that's also interesting. But in fact, let's just do this right now. Let me find this graphic because this was from a recent interview. Take a look at this graphic really quick. This is not Photoshop. We all know that we all have lines on our hands. So I know I got a bit of light here, but see, you can see all the lines on my hand here. See the lines? Now look at that picture. The only place that you can see any kind of line is right by Trump's thumbs, okay? The rest of his hands are almost pure flat, no lines or anything. There's other close-ups if you watch this clip. I swear that Trump is wearing some kind of gloves there to hide the blotches on his hands, okay? If you watch the video closely as he's turning his hands and things, you can hardly see any lines. Look at the lady to the right there. See the lines that, you know, it's natural. His hands are totally flat and opaque. So I know he's got some kind of gloves on there. That he wore on that presser to hide the blotches. So just wanted to kind of bring that to your attention. Nobody's really talking about it, but it's quite interesting that he's got something on there. Nobody in the press picked it up, but I've watched that video over and over again, and you can kind of see. And if there's shots there where you look up his sleeves there, it goes up there. He's got some kind of glove on there to hide the blotches on his hands, but kind of interesting. Moving on here, let's talk about the UFC fight. Yes, sirree, bub. Let's get out there and beat the crap out of people in the celebration of the 250th anniversary of the USA and Trump, because UFC fights is good old American knockdowns. Yes, sirree, bub. So Trump's plan for the UFC fight on the White House South Lawn has required a monumental effort from more than 7 federal agencies, hundreds of staffers working on site daily, and yes, it has cost the U.S. taxpayers about $60 million to put this fight on, which is basically entertainment. It's staged, and we all know that, but Trump thinks that people beating up other people and having fights is a good old American value, so let's do this on the 250th anniversary of the U.S. of A. So it is scheduled for the weekend, and its main attraction, 7 mixed martial art matches on Sunday. Let's do the fight on Sunday as we celebrate the Sabbath. That's the best time to do this, ladies and gentlemen. Instead of celebrating your church, let's go out and beat the shit out of everybody else. That's more fun. So the money came from the UFC and groups affiliated with it, so they say. Last-minute construction continues on the arena as they get ready to do this. The octagon in its 8-sided cage that surrounds the sometimes bloodied combatants and sits on the center of the constructed area of the South Lawn. The arena is expected to hold 4,000 spectators with another 120,000 visitors, including, as you're well aware of, military representatives. Pete Hegseth has put out there that, he is handpicking people that need to show up for this in their military uniforms. They must be slim, fit, and they got to get there on their own damn dime. And they will show up there and support the president. And, of course, a lot of the tickets was in the form of a lottery. And they have to watch from the nearby ellipse, except for probably those that will get up close to the arena. They're hand-picked. Some of those, I said, are military people. Now, they began this work on May 20th, and the Secret Service worked with the UFC to screen between 20 and 30 trucks of equipment, as well as between 700 and 900 staff that came in daily for the installation. Now, the document that was made public did not specify the extent of government resources spent on the project, but said the 7 agencies, including Homeland Security, the Federal Aviation Administration, have all allocated significant resources and manpower. The schedule will kick off Saturday with a ceremonial weigh-in of the ellipse, followed by a concert by country musicians. The Zach Brown Band, a UFC Freedom 250 Fan Fest will be ongoing through the weekend with interactive experiences, live shows, celebrity appearances, exclusive on-stage moments, meet and greets, live music, and interviews with the athletes. And of course, at the close, Trump is scheduled to fly to France for the G7 summit. Disassembly installations will begin the next day, as they are expected to be entirely removed by June 23rd. Moving on this story, there are 14 athletes competing, and their training is rigorous, so they say. And of course, they got to lose about 20 pounds, and they're really making a big whoop-to-do about this. Of course, on the other side, many have characterized this thing as a corrupt use of our most sacred national monuments for private gain. The National Park Service pushed back on that claim. And so they said, hey, this is just part of the celebration of the U.S.'s 250th anniversary. But as you're well aware of it, it has turned personally political, basically supporting Trump. Trump is calling the shots. It's his birthday. And that's why so many people have decided to disassociate themselves from this event, because it's nothing except about Trump and what he wants. It's nothing to do with the celebration of the 200th anniversary of America, U.S. of A. It's very Republican and one-sided, so. Now, you ask yourself, well, the people love this thing. A small portion of Americans have approved of this UFC fight event set to play out on the White House's South Lawn. According to a survey, just 16% of Americans said it was appropriate for President Trump to host the event at the White House. The Reuters PSOS poll found that another 46% said the opposite, while 38% said they had neither opinion, whether they're sure or unsure about it. Now, the latest survey conducted this month included 4,531 U.S. adults and had a margin of error of 2% points. Sunday's UFC Freedom 250 is part of a slate of events to commemorate the U.S. 250th anniversary and is slated to host more than half a dozen fights featuring the sport's top competitors, as I already discussed with you. Now, as you're well aware of, Trump has said that he thought the structure is so cool that he might want to leave it up. In my last podcast, he compared this thing to the Eiffel Tower and said maybe we should just leave it up and celebrate America because it's so unique and so cool looking. Of course, this is Trump, off in La La Land, but that's what he said. But here's the bottom part about this is the South Lawn, as I said in my previous podcast, but I got to reiterate this. The South Lawn where that monstrous thing sits is where a Marine One lands to pick up the president to take him to Andrews Air Force Base when he's got to go places. Since this thing has been sitting there, they've had to bring in the Beast and shuffle Trump from there to Andrews Air Force Base via motorcade, which takes about I think they said 3 times as long because of the routes and security. Whereas, Marine One, when they take him there, he gets to Andrews Air Force Base in minutes. So they got to go through Washington, D.C. and through traffic. And again, this is costing you, the taxpayers, millions of dollars every time that they got to move him from the White House to Andrews. Because Marine One can't land there. That's their base. And so they got this monstrosity. I have no plans to watch this damn thing. I know some people will, but this thing is a farce, in my opinion. It is the most stupidest idea that I have ever seen. I don't know how many young macho men watch UFC fights, or some ladies do probably do. I know I don't, because it's entertainment. It's not real. It's, phony. So, but, take it for what you want to do. If you want to watch it, you go right ahead. All right. So, interesting news there. So, yeah, that's my podcast for this week. I covered a lot of stuff here. I hope you've enjoyed it. I look forward to your comments. There's just so much stuff that Donald Trump gives us. And this weekend, I hope and pray we get some kind of agreement on Iran. You go ahead and enjoy and watch the fiasco fight. If that's what you want to choose to do, you go for it. But my main concern is to get this stupid thing with Iran done and over with. And again, keep in mind, it's just starting off with just a 60-day ceasefire agreement, and then we'll see what happens. We'll see if it holds up. How many times have we seen this from Trump? We got a deal, we got a deal, we got a deal, we don't have a deal. We got a deal, we got a deal, we don't have a deal. So you watch and see what happens. Until then, you try to have a good week. Until next time, this is Roy. Talk to you later.